Welcome to the International Student Connect project and our webinar on Canadian workplace culture. My name is Ingrid and I will be the presenter of today's webinar. Today we will be talking about the Canadian workplace culture and how that will affect you as an international student. On our agenda today, we will look at Canadian workplace culture, physical appearance in the workplace, workplace norms and expectations, adaptation tips and tricks, and some workplace do's and don'ts. The International Student Connect project was created to address the settlement needs and to provide settlement support to international students and their families, and to help them integrate into Canadian society if they decided to make Canada their home after they are finished with their studies. ISC is a partnership between colleges, universities, and community settlement agencies. The project is funded by the Ministry of Citizenship and Immigration Canada. COSTI Immigrant Services is the coordinating agency of the International Student Connect project. COSTI Immigrant Services offers settlement services. We are a nonprofit organization, and we offer services in employment, language and skills training, housing, family and mental health, children and youth, seniors, women, and some information is provided in the preparation for Canadian citizenship as well. Canadian workplace culture is our first topic, and we want to look at the term culture. Many of you already have a great understanding of what the term culture means. Culture is the way of life of a people. It is the cultivated behaviors, values, beliefs, and symbols that they accept. Usually, these values, beliefs, and symbols are accepted by that particular group of people without thought, as they're generally passed to the group from one generation to the next. The acculturation process is the cultural adjustment of an individual, group, or people who adapt or borrow traits from another culture. When we talk about acculturation, it means that we're hoping that you as an immigrant to Canada, whether international student or not, will develop the skills and the knowledge that you need to be able to adjust to the expectations and social patterns of a new cultural setting. And that new cultural setting will then become your home. As we know, every workplace, or regardless of where you live, whether it's in Canada or outside of Canada, each workplace has its own culture. Some may be different from other workplace cultures that you're familiar with. Prior to beginning a job, it is useful to ask about the daily operations and expectations of the organization. It is something critical for you to learn the knowledge, the skills, and the attitudes expected from your employer and your colleagues. Knowing these things will actually assist you in integrating into the Canadian workplace and helping to ensure that you have a successful employment and be able to transition from one position to another. Part of understanding how the workplace works is the decision-making process. Ideas for decisions are often collaborated here within the Canadian workplaces between managers and their subordinates. Participation in initiatives are often rewarded. Management often provides mentoring for younger employees, and it is acceptable to seek answers or feedback from your manager. In some countries, we are aware that the way that the system works is that the manager will make the decision, and that decision is then passed down to the subordinates. In many of the workplaces here in Canada, the decisions are made together as a team. And so if you are accustomed to a workplace where participation is not something that you are familiar with, once you get into your job at a Canadian employment, it is useful for you to take a moment to begin to understand how those organizations are operated and the level of participation that is expected from you. Truly, you will be rewarded. There will be some challenges to overcome. For example, there will be knowledge barriers, and this means understanding the expectations of your employer as well as the rights and responsibilities as an employee in a Canadian organization. There may be some communication barriers, so improving your English to better understand and respond to the requirements of the workplace is a useful thing to do. Now, chances are you may speak not just English, but you may speak other languages as well. Think about whether or not it is important for you to be able to speak more than one language while you're at work. Some workplaces will ask that if you are able to speak both English and French, that you're actually able to provide support to other colleagues or different programs. So some of these barriers may work to your advantage in terms of the fact that if you do speak more than one language, you may be asked to use one of those skills. Status and formality. Canadians can be very informal in workplace relationships compared to individuals from other countries. Their typical behavior includes saying no directly, and this means that if they're asked to do something outside of their scope of work or their job descriptions that they do not feel they should be doing, they will directly say no to their manager or their supervisor. They, in most cases, will not walk away from the meeting thinking they will not do it, but didn't say so in the meeting. So this is something that, again, a part of the workplace culture that you should familiarize yourselves with. Canadians tend to be very vocal about the way they feel about things. They will say it with respect, and most often managers will respect the fact that you are asking for something to be done outside of the scope of work that you were employed to do. And if you do feel like it's something that you shouldn't be doing, you can voice your opinion. The only thing that we do ask is that you do take into consideration that there is a respect factor that goes with that. There is equal opportunity that is displayed in the workplace. Emphasis on personal accomplishments and not titles or your family ties is what is often looked upon. And you will often hear the term mean what you say or walk the talk. This means that if you, during your interview, you had promised that you would be able to accomplish certain tasks, or if during a meeting you propose that you can do something, the expectation is that you are going to be doing what you say that you want, that you would be doing. Or if you're put in a position of management and you are expecting your subordinates to perform a particular task, the expectation is that you will be able to step up to it and you'll be able to do what you say that you can in fact do. So absolutely remember that term, walk the talk. Now, physical appearance is quite important at work. So it is quite important for you to learn the dress code types, and there are a few different types of dress codes. So there's casual, business, business, and a few other sometimes informal ways of dressing. Sometimes they'll have dress down days where you'll be able to perhaps contribute to a charity and you're able to dress down on those particular days. One of the things to keep in mind is that you must always be clean and tidy. Never look disheveled. We've decided to give you a graphic look of what it looks like. So, for example, here are some different dress codes, and we got this these images from wfashionmall.com. You can take a look at their website. It has a lot of information that could help you. So a business formal suit, it can be a three-piece suit or standard slacks and a jacket. It fits well. That means it's not too tight and it's not too baggy. It should have full-length pants or knee-length skirt and be worn with a button-up shirt or formal blouse. They should also be worn with dress shoes. Then you look at the business attire and the business attire for the office. On the bottom, you should be wearing slacks or tailored knee-length skirt. On the top, a long-sleeved button-up shirt or blouse. Or it could be short sleeves as well, depending on the weather. Then you've got business casual, as you can see, smart casual, and casual. If the organization that you work for does not require you to wear a formal outfit, then it's not something that is necessary for you to do. If the organization that you work for does not require you to dress casually, please do not dress casually and attend work. That will cast a shadow over, the way that you're viewed by your peers. For the men, again, we look at business formal, a business attire, business casual, smart casual, and casual. Depending, again, on the workplace that you work for, you could potentially be wearing any one of these outfits. Most often, the business casual is what is sought after in many workplaces. There are some workplace norms and some expectations. Now, when we talk about workplace norms and expectations, we are looking at the teamwork factor. Teamwork is a valued trait in Canadian workplace culture. You participate in work discussions, and that means team meetings, etc. A handshake is normal when meeting new business partners. In group discussions, try to participate even only if you're asked just a few questions or if you ask a few questions. If you do not speak up, your coworkers or employers may think that you have no ideas of your own, and you don't really want to fall into that category. So think about that. Your superiors are usually addressed formally unless you're asked to use their first name, for example, Mr. Smith, Mrs. Wilson, or Mrs. Jones. In many workplaces, you will find that your superiors will tell you that you may address them by their first names. This is not abnormal. Try to make direct eye contact during conversations. Direct eye contact is something that you want to make, but you do not want to hold a stare so that you become almost intimidating. So you want to make direct eye contact, then you will, move your eye away from the person and not necessarily staring them down. Allow a person to finish speaking before replying. This can come across as actually quite rude if you do not allow someone to finish their train of thought. Refrain from pointing your finger when giving an opinion. That is also considered something that is rude, to point your finger. I'm aware that this is acceptable in some cultures. However, in the Canadian culture, it is not. Ensure you arrive on time for work and appointments. Being late is not fashionable. It is not making a fashionable statement. So please think about the fact that you absolutely do need to be at work and be at work on time or for whatever appointments you have. Always try to resolve your conflicts directly before reporting an issue to your supervisor or manager. Why do you think that this is important? If you're having a conflict with a coworker, a private, direct conversation can usually solve your problem. Often, things arise due to misunderstandings, and most Canadians prefer to solve it directly. If this doesn't solve the issue, then contact your Skills Connect employment counselor for assistance or your human resources representative for some support, rather than go straight to a manager. It is a good thing to be able to work through your conflicts with your colleagues directly as opposed to getting managers involved if you don't necessarily need to do so. Diversity is another successful adaptation tip. We know that the way that Ontario and especially Toronto works is we have a lot of different cultures that comes together in this community. So it is great to share your cultural values and beliefs. People are sometimes afraid of what they do not understand. If someone don't understand you, they they may come across as being rude and saying things that you may think is unacceptable. However, they may not necessarily mean you any harm. It could just be a case of truly a misunderstanding. So one of the best ways to integrate into a workplace is to help people understand your background and your reason for coming to Canada. Perhaps you're in Canada to stay as an immigrant, or perhaps you're here as one step in your international global career process. Canadians may assume that your goal is to stay and encourage you to try an entry-level position as you get established. This may be a good idea if your goal is to work in a Canadian workplace and settle into life in Canada eventually. However, if you're here as an international worker, your needs and goals may be different. So it's great to share that with your counterparts at work. Be open and willing to accept diversity. Canada is an unusually diverse country, so it can be challenging to identify Canadian workplace norms. They will be different according to who owns or runs your organization and the types of workers who are employed there. Ask questions and be assertive. Don't be too afraid. Canadians are often very open to questions and appreciate you asking rather than making assumptions. However, they also expect you to work independently. If you need to get something done, do the best you can with the information that you do have. Though, once again, like I said, they do want you to ask the questions. However, definitely try to understand that if you have a task to be completed and you're able to complete this on your own, it is really a very good thing. We often don't recognize our own culture until we are exposed to something different. So notice what seems unusual in the workplace rather than assuming others are doing things wrong. That's something that you really should think about. Here we're offering you some adaptation tips and tricks. Successful adaptation tips and tricks are, one of them is language. Practice the local language. Canada has two official languages, English and French. It is considered impolite to speak your native language while in the presence of others who do not understand the language, especially in the workplace. We know that your mother tongue is important, and we're in no way saying that you shouldn't use it with your peers, but it is very important to understand that people do take offense when they do not know what you're saying. Think about it. Even native speakers have trouble understanding each other sometimes. So if we have to learn a different accent and then understand your language as well, it could be perceived as you're saying something about the persons around you who do not understand your language that you don't want them to hear. So definitely consider that before you decide to speak in your language to another colleague while you're in the presence of someone who does not understand. Greetings is another important tip. When you come in contact with your coworkers for the first time each day, be sure to say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. In Canadian culture, you will not need to greet them again after the first greeting. You may become friends with your coworkers, or you may be acquaintances. Do not ask directly about sensitive topics, such as personal health matters or sexuality, unless they bring it up first. These are very important tips. A handshake. A handshake is normal when meeting a new business partner. A firm handshake tells the receiver that you're genuine and confident. Shake for 1 or 2 seconds and shake steadily from the elbow. Please do not hold on to the person's hand for over a minute, shaking it and shaking it and shaking it. They may not necessarily be very impressed with that. So please do avoid an overly powerful handshake. In other words, what we're saying is don't crush the other person's hand. Personal space is another very, very important aspect of integration. We value our personal space. When speaking to other people or lining up, we typically feel most comfortable allowing an arm's length between people. If you look at the picture here, the way that it has been captured, it tells you per meter what is actually acceptable. So an audience zone would be outside of the 3.6 meters. So if you're speaking to a group of people, it is okay for you to stand a little bit further away than 3.6 meters. A social zone, so if it's someone that you know and you're socializing, 3.6 meters is okay. The friend zone would be 1.2 meters, and 45 centimeters means you're way too close to my face. And if you are too close to my face or my body, I will begin to feel uncomfortable. Many people from different parts of the world, because their culture is very different and you are able to get up close and personal with each other. In Canadian culture, this is not the case at all. So please, once again, be very conscious of how close or how far from a person you're standing. Time is also an important aspect of adaptation. You should always be punctual, and that includes your lunch breaks as well as the time that you arrive at work. Be ready for work or for a meeting up to 5 minutes before the start of either your shift or that meeting. Some cultures place different values on time. In Canadian workplace culture, punctuality is very important and could be the difference between getting a promotion or not. Now, I can tell you that where I come from, it is fashionable to be late. And we even have our own time, like, okay, so if the meeting or the party is scheduled for, let's say, 2:30, in our culture, it is okay for you to show up at like 5 o'clock. No, not in Canadian culture. In fact, it becomes annoying and you will be spoken to about it if it's something that is done consistently. Holding doors for people is another one. This is something that perhaps you're not familiar with, but please do keep this in mind and remember that you learned this from the International Student Connects webinar. Holding a door open for others is a very polite gesture, and if someone is close enough behind you, it is customary to hold the door open so they may either enter or exit. I'm sure for some people it's a culture shock. You get here and you notice that the person that is coming out of the doors, they will stop and hold the door open for you, and you're probably thinking, well, I'm not actually associated with this person, but they've held the door for me. That is a Canadian norm. So please don't be too alarmed when that happens, or if that happens to you, and return the favor as well. Sensitivity is another one. Canadians will discuss jobs and families, but not personal things like their age, religion, pay, and politics. Be mindful of sensitive topics with coworkers, especially personal health and sexuality. If your coworker tries to share details about a sensitive topic that makes you uncomfortable, you should try to change the subject. You may become friends with your coworkers, but again, think about how much details you share and how much you ask of your coworkers. People will often become visibly upset if they're being asked questions that they are uncomfortable with, or if it seems as if you are of a prying nature, they will avoid you. So definitely keep those boundaries and respect the way that others feel about these things. Scents are also a very strong one, where, many places, not only your workplace, they're very conscious of scents, as many people suffer from allergies due to certain scents. Body odor is also a very big concern, and many people stay away from deodorant. There are quite a bit of people who stay away from deodorant for various reasons. However, with this in mind, there are many alternatives to deodorant that will keep your body odor under control. So if you know that you're one of those people who is adamant about using deodorant, please think about an alternative so that you're not subjecting your coworkers to high body odor. And perhaps in some cultures you will not be approached about it. In Canadian culture, people will complain and they will go to HR, and perhaps you'll have a conversation with HR about your body odor, which is a very sensitive topic for anyone at all to try to address. So definitely, please think about, you know, perhaps you don't use deodorant like myself. However, I have various different things that I use that are natural. And especially in the summertime, I feel that I do need to add something else to my arsenal, I will go out and I will purchase a natural body deodorant that can help with body odor. Before we wrap up our webinar, we want to show you some workplace do's and don'ts. So we'll go through the list of do's. Smile and be approachable at all times. Practice time management, as we talked about earlier in the webinar. Try to arrive 10 to 15 minutes earlier than the designated time for whatever meeting, or if it's for work. Help others when you have time. Body language and your tone of voice is also very, very important. Certain body language can come across as aggressive or bullying, so be very conscious of that. Some of us do come from countries where we don't necessarily speak English as our first language. And for me especially, my language can come across a little bit, my native tongue can come across a little bit harsh if you are not someone from my culture or from my background. You could have the understanding that I'm fighting with somebody else. So I've made a conscious effort to ensure that when I speak to people who are outside of my culture, I actually speak English rather than going into my dialect. The don'ts, we talked about this earlier. Do not interrupt others while they're speaking. Please don't waste time on complaining or gossiping. It's not very productive. It is not something that is looked upon very highly. In fact, it's highly frowned upon. Do not be late without informing your boss. So if you know that you're running late and you would like to advise your boss about that, if they don't have an attendance line, try to contact someone in your organization who can get a message to your boss that you've had an emergency and there's a reason why you are late. Don't sacrifice your own work for others. Please do not start doing everybody else's work as opposed to completing your own just because you feel that you need to help that person. Do not use your native tongue in groups that are outside of your own nationality. That, again, we talked about a little bit earlier. It's not considered to be something quite appropriate. You should always know the requirements of the job. You should submit your work that you have been given prior to the deadline. So over deliver and under promise. No, no. Over, yes, over deliver and under promise. So let's say that you wanted to, you were given a deadline of May 20th. What you want to do is promise that, yes, I am going to deliver on May 20th, but come May 12th or 15th, whatever assignment you were given, it is completed and submitted. So you over-deliver and under-promise. Ask for suggestions when appropriate. We talked about that earlier as well. Participate in company events. This is a very critical one. Socialization is something that some people are not quite comfortable with. However, most companies will have company get-togethers and company functions. Please make yourself available for these and try to be, even if you have to stay for like a half an hour or an hour, try to be there and participate and enjoy your coworkers' company. Do not depend on your boss or your coworker to complete your tasks for you. Don't make major decisions alone. Always consider your ideas the best. Like, you are not the best, okay? Yes, we know that I'm the best. I'm just kidding. But really, many of us have brilliant ideas. Bring them to the table, but hear someone else's ideas and try to understand from someone else's perspective. Even though you may have a great idea, someone else's idea may be just as good. And don't be a workaholic. I mean, it is great to, again, over-deliver, but please do not be a workaholic, as it does affect your coworkers as well, and they don't necessarily look upon that very favorably. We have some resources that are available to you. We have the International Student Connect website. There's some group workshops. If you're in Canada, there are one-on-one group sessions that you can attend. There are webinars. We have a handbook, the International Student Guide that can be found on our website. We have fact sheets and also our transition plans. Please do visit our website at www.internationalstudentconnect.org. You can do so through www.settlement.org as well, or you can go to our website directly as is shown here. You can enroll for the Let's Connect session or for a webinar on our website. Any one of the webinars, whether live or recorded, you will have access to those. We've got, again, our International Student Handbook. We've got the Student Guide that is located on our website, as well as our fact sheets. The transition plan is a tool that helps you keep track of all the tasks and set schedules and deadlines for the things that you need to accomplish. Using the ISC resources and the checklists that are available on the website, you can identify all the things that you do need, and you can add them to your own personalized plans. So to get started, you would actually go to the highlighted portion, which is right here on the screen that I'm highlighting in yellow. So you'll get started on your transition plan there. You can select transition plan here, and then you'll get started down here. Okay? So these are some excellent tools that we do have that are available to you and will help you in your transition should you decide that you are going to remain in Canada after you have completed your studies. We have some upcoming webinars. So we've got a webinar in education, one in housing, one in employment, immigration pathways, money and personal finance. And should you have any questions, please feel free to send us an email at isc@costi.org, or you may contact us at 1-844-871-4567. Again, that is 1-844-871-4567. Thank you for joining us, and I do hope that you will join us for our additional webinars.